Hey guys, what's up? Flex here to talk about Call of Duty, more specifically Modern Warfare 3. Now before we get started, please be sure to consider subscribing, liking or disliking this video, as well as possibly starting a conversation down in the comments. If you are new, please be sure to check out my channel as well as Dead Ops Regiment's channel. So, controversial topic, even in this day and age, several years after Modern Warfare 2019, is still the issue of matchmaking. Whether skill-based or engagement optimized, we all felt the major shift in 2019. The shift that went above and beyond what skill-based matchmaking or lobby balancing was doing in the years prior. In Modern Warfare 3, the issues are still prevalent, at the highest concentration being Day 1 and Day 2, toning down a good bit since then, but it could still be turned down a lot more. Now, what is causing this? How does this algorithm work? Well, it's a complex system that's more than just a few algorithms. There's many pertaining to multiple goals, held within the same matchmaking system. If you want to understand what these goals are, I suggest going and reading the matchmaking patents belonging to Activision. Look at the bottom where it says active or abandoned, pay attention to the ones that are currently active and being used. Now, in looking at these patents, you will notice some details pertaining to aspects of gameplay that apply to Call of Duty, as well as some details applying to features and gameplay mechanics that are not found in Call of Duty. And that's because Activision, being a large company, they detail utilizing game mechanics that span across the entirety of their game catalog. And each patent doesn't necessarily represent a self-contained, all-encompassing method of matchmaking. Each patent more or less represents an algorithm for matchmaking that is then applied to the current core system of matchmaking. The first one relevant to this conversation was approved and applied and is still active. It is one that was approved around 2015 and made active around 2016 that is called System and Method for Driving Microtransactions in Multiplayer Video Games. The basics of this method are laid out in figure number 8. Gate 1. Identify items that may be relevant to a first player. Gate 2. Identify a second player that possesses the item. Gate 3. Tune match variables and/or coefficients to match first and second players. Gate 4. Match first and second players. Now, in this gate, it determines, did the first player purchase that item you're trying to get them to buy? If no, update player profile to indicate non-purchase, which essentially means start the process over. If they did buy said item, it says next you should place that player in gameplay session for which the item is effective. But this is not as simple as pairing a better player or a less skilled player in order to achieve a greater likelihood of victory for said player sorting the microtransactions. This patent lays out going as far as affecting a skilled player's accuracy, likelihood of finding good weapon variants in game modes that require looting, and also boosting the utilized player's health if necessary to achieve more victorious interactions that will hopefully get the attention of a player who is refusing to buy microtransactions. Now, another patent that was filed around the same time is called Matchmaking System and Method for Multiplayer Video Games, a revision on the abandoned methods and systems for improved player matching in multiplayer game environments. This patent shares a lot of the same mechanics and details as the other patent, but this patent's main goal is to essentially level the playing field as well as try to match compatible playstyles with one another in an attempt to increase and maintain player retention, which for 6v6 modes in Call of Duty, we actually see player retention drastically dropping because of this patent, which I talk about in a previous video. Its mechanics and methods are way more invasive than the means of skill-based matchmaking before it. This patent did not get approved until mid-2019 and was first used in the beta for Modern Warfare 2019 and of course its launch thereafter. So this is what we got to feel and experience when Modern Warfare 2019 launched. This is why so many of us were experiencing 6v6 matches where everybody had the same kills and deaths, matches nicknamed clone lobbies, intended to match what the algorithm considered compatible while protecting players of different skill sets and playstyles. But overall, that's not how it came across. Instead, it was widely perceived as a collective punishment for the act of simply learning and adapting or simply being dedicated to the franchise. This led a lot of players to quickly move on to other games outside of Call of Duty. This frustrated a lot of competitive players because, on top of the obvious frustrations, the better you were, the more likely you were going to be paired up in lobbies with people who were hacking. This also meant the better you were, the smaller match pools the game could pick from to match you with other skilled players, meaning that your ping would skyrocket, increasing latency and negatively affecting your experience overall. It also gave you no room to flex and caused you to doubt your progression no matter how much better you got at the game over time. These two patents presented matchmaking algorithms with two separate sets of goals, but are applied to the same core matchmaking system. These additional algorithms can, of course, be tweaked, modified, turned up, or turned down as they have been in the past several years, which is why matchmaking feels drastically different in Modern Warfare 2019 than it later did in Cold War or Vanguard, for example. But the effects of these most certainly manifested glaringly in the first several nights of Modern Warfare 3's multiplayer launch. I definitely felt it while playing solo, but I decided to play with my wife, who is new to Call of Duty, and see what that did. Now, usually the matchmaking intensifies if you bring in another player who's also skilled at the game. But the intensity more than doubled for me simply bringing on my wife, who is brand new to Call of Duty and has a 0.5 KD. It increased even more, of course, when I brought on a third player who was indeed skilled at the game. We were definitely getting punished for all playing together, which was absolutely ridiculous and disheartening, and it felt like the game was self-sabotaging. We also began to notice a higher frequency of players that were sporting weapons variants or skins only obtainable through buying a bundle. Players utilizing skins and weapons obtained in bundles also appeared more frequently to survive firefights where they received much more damage than other players who were not sporting said cosmetics. Now, I began documenting this as the night continued, but unfortunately for the video, much of the footage that I had attempted to obtain later in the night, when the intensities of these effects were at their highest, those clips were no longer being saved because my Xbox had run out of memory. But for those curious, what eventually happened as the night got worse was every lobby we got into, the entire enemy team, give or take 1 or 2 players, was sporting cosmetics and weapons variants made available in the more recent bundles. I had several pieces of footage at the very end of the night where I found myself at point blank with someone sporting a recent cosmetic skin as well as a recent weapon variant. As said player was sitting still and unaware, I would get close enough so that the player's back or torso was taking up almost my entire screen, and then I would hip fire my weapon to see how long it took for enough hit markers to manifest to kill them, which for completely cosmetically decked out players took a very long time. The vast majority of my bullets seemed to vanish into thin air, regardless of the attachment that I had on my gun. I was also able to repeat this experiment using the same gun but now on a player who was not running around with microtransaction items, and the hipfire accuracy was magically back to normal, killing said player very, very quickly. These clips in particular unfortunately did not make it, but the clips that I do have still show players sporting bundled items who required much more damage to kill than other players in the lobbies not sporting said items. Though the examples I do have capture interactions mostly against players who were simply sporting a bundled weapon variant without necessarily also sporting a recent skin. Let's get into it. These clips were broken down frame by frame to get the exact number of hit markers, and I placed the number right next to the crosshairs. Now that is 6 hit markers, with one of them being a headshot or critical hit marker, and this individual did not die. They are not using stims or battle rage, but they are wearing the skin that they purchased in the Bone Chiller bundle. Me, my wife, and Priatomic all made a note of how absorbent this particular player was, but just to be sure, let's check. Does it actually take 7 or more bullets to kill with this gun at that distance? No critical hit markers were even necessary. 5 regular hit markers with this firearm at that distance is all that is actually needed to kill. Next up, we have an even more in-your-face example.
Loading fresh mag! Flash grenade! Fire! Enemy!
10 hit markers, 2 of which were headshots or critical hit markers, number 4 and number 5, is what it took to take down this individual who is using a weapon he purchased in a bundle. I'm not exactly sure which bundle it was, but I do know that when you get shot by this weapon, you turn into confetti. Once again, the other players on my team made note that this player didn't move around very skillfully, but seemed to be very challenging to kill. Now, some of you might point out that only 3 of my bullets actually hit the individual without being obstructed by something, and the other 7 hit markers I obtained was through thin metal surfaces. So you may think, maybe that explains why it took so many bullets. So we're going to recreate this by shooting through a thin metal surface and see how many regular non-critical hit markers to the body it takes at that distance to kill. Now, how many shots to the body with nothing in the way? Even without any critical hit markers, the 3 hits that I got in open air and the 7 hits I got through metal surfaces were more than enough on their own to kill at that distance with this firearm. But it took the combination of the 2 to finish the job with 10 overall hit markers. Don't worry, the examples get even better.
We're taking Alpha.
I believe the sniper rifle this guy was using was from a bundle from Modern Warfare 2 that carried over, and that was 2 critical hit markers to the head and 1 non-critical hit marker above the shoulders. Should that have been enough to kill him? Let's find out. Let's even go below the shoulders. Now, if you're still desperate to try and make an excuse, you might be thinking, well, maybe the dummies in the firing range don't actually have as much health as real players do. And to that, I will take you back to the exact same match where all the other players at the same distance only take 3 bullets to kill, even without critical headshot hit markers.
Hostile UAV in the area.
Loading fresh mag.
Now at this point, one of my teammates has told me that they just damaged a player that is running around to my direction. This right here is the same player from earlier that didn't die. He has already been hit once by a teammate, which will be represented by this blue number 1. Now let's see how many more hit markers from me it takes to kill him.
Friendly UAV online. We're losing Charlie.
Now that happened a little bit quick, so let's recap. 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 hit markers. Meaning that even if we assume my teammate had not already damaged him, we are still talking 4 hit markers to kill him versus everybody else that only takes 3. Please continue watching.
Enemy has captured 2 objectives. Alpha secure.
Enemy KIA. Taking fire.
Securing objective Bravo.
As you can clearly see, regardless of any distance, capable at this part of the map, regardless of the amount of critical hits you do or do not get, it is a fact that every other player is dying at 3 hit markers, while only 1 player on their team requires 4 to 5 hit markers to die, seemingly in relation to cosmetics. I have one more. Now this guy was running around with what looked like a submachine gun, kind of had like green flames glowing on it. I'm not exactly sure what bundle that's from, but let's go ahead and see with the same SVA class in the firing range if those 4 shots should have killed him. Now I wish I had the other clips that did not save. They were much worse and much more damning than these were, but all I can say at this point is that it was so bad, it was measurable, it was repeatable and predictable, and overall was just a huge slap in the face. Now, like I said, a lot of that stuff has been turned way down since the first few days, but I feel like it can be turned down even more, and it should be turned down even more. For those still watching, including if there's any devs watching, I will leave you with the words that I posted on Twitter. This game is built well, but you are literally suffocating it by punishing players for playing with friends, as well as, per the active patent, US 2016/000527-0A1, punishing players who don't buy cosmetics and periodically buffing/aiding players who do to encourage purchase. To punish players for dedicating so much time to the franchise, to punish them for not buying cosmetics they don't want, or punishing them for playing with their friends, with a compound of the other punishments, is going to destroy the image and memory of what is otherwise a great game. Which is an insult not only to the fans, but to the developers whose hard work will only be criticized and judged on the basis of how their work was used and abused by the publisher to exploit the player base at the expense of the game's potential. Thanks for watching. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment down below, keep the conversation going, and I will catch you guys next time.